Welcome back, everybody. Today is the last day of August for our schooling, which means when you come back, we'll be in September already, and it flies. So, just in case you're ever watching this video in the future, we have 8:30:24 today. Bam Bam, can you see that if it's that fine, or do you want me to be a little bit more bold? Can you see this number, or should I make it a little bit thicker? I'll just make it thicker. All right. What color are we using today, Zed? Orange. We're gonna see if I might have to go like more towards brown. It'll have to be like dark orange. We'll see if we can see it. Check. Yay or nay?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it orange? I don't know. I'm bad at colors. I'm not the guy that you want to ask about that sort of thing. But it looks like it could be orange. I don't know. We'll use it. If I need a different color, we will. Okay. So let's check it out. We are not in the first chapter, so I can put that stuff away for good forever. It's gone and done with. We're talking about what? Observations, obviously, the last thing we spoke about, but the overall focus is we are looking at principles of one very particular field of study. Ecology. Okay, so here's what we did yesterday, right? You just barely got started. We said that ecology is the study of the relationships amongst life and with the natural environment. We're all going to start yawning just completely throughout the whole hour. Here's a fun thing. The person who I've seen is the most empathetic yawner that I've ever met, Miss Jarvis. Oh. You can just look at Miss Jarvis and go, and she'll start yawning. It's awesome. I mess with her in meetings all the time. But here we go. Ecology, and we gain insight by observations. Can somebody remind me what codependence is within the context of ecology? We used a specific example yesterday.
Like the bear and the berry.
Bear and the berry, right? So the berries need the bear to spread their seeds, and the bear needs the berries to eat. Yeah. So like they rely on one another, and that's a pretty big relationship that they've used throughout their life. Okay, as we keep kicking forward. Codependence is the very last thing we wrote. I'm going to say this exists, and that's too bold now. We'll figure it out. It exists in every single environment. I'm going to capitalize every, even though it's not a vocab. Every environment. Okay, there's always codependence happening. Sometimes it's between an animal and nature, or animal and like the structures they live, so like maybe rocks and caves and stuff like that, or the ocean. Like it varies wildly. But we get all this through the study of ecology. Now I'm not going to make you guys write this part down, but I think you're on the page and you guys have bigger writing. The study of just the natural being of stuff in our world has obviously been around for a long time. There were always people who were interested in how does the world work. Now, it hasn't shown up in a real formal setting in Western culture. So here, the U.S. and Europe and all that, until fairly recently. If I asked you to think of a famous person who studies the relationships between animals and their environment, can you name anybody? Darwin. He's going to be about the first one that I can even possibly think of. Now, you guys have obviously learned about evolution to some degree. I don't know how much you spoke about it. That's not where we're starting right now, but that's his name. Throwback, not like just out of curiosity. Darwin's from which country?
I don't know, somewhere in Europe.
It's certainly Europe, English. He was an English scientist, and he was on a ship, right? The ship that he was on was called the HMS Beagle, like the dog, a beagle. HMS, anytime you see it, Her Majesty's ship, it indicates that you're looking at a British or United Kingdom ship. Okay, with that in mind, the HMS Beagle, its expedition's primary purpose was not to do scientific research. Like, they didn't care as much about the scientific research. They said, hey, Charlie, get over here. We got a space on this boat. You want to learn about some stuff? And he says, sure. The real goal of the expedition wasn't scientific knowledge. It was instead to go make maps because Britain wanted to expand their colonies, right? Like, obviously, they wanted to rule the world. So, just a quick one. We're not going to talk about it. In our country specifically, you guys ever been to a national park?
Yeah.
Which one?
Freddie, we went to the
What did you say?
Oh yeah, we went to this one park on our trip. I forgot the name. It's like
Oh, Wrangell St. Elias.
Yes.
Cool. You guys were on the peninsula?
I think so.
Ketchikan?
No,
Where was it? Sorry. Wrangell, obviously, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. All right, so Wrangell St. Elias National Park. Cool. There's others. And where I come from, there's some state parks and there's some national parks. Like this summer, I went on a trip through Denali National Park, which is northern Alaska. My mom came up and we did that. The favorite place I've ever been in the world, in the entire world, the most beautiful place I've ever been, was in Redwood Forest National Park. Redwood National Park in Northern California. You guys ever been to the big redwoods in Northern California?
I've heard.
Oh my gosh, it's insane. Have you been there?
No, but
Okay, I don't have time to find my own pictures. The development of like ecology in Western, especially U.S. stuff, didn't really begin until 1905. Even with Darwin, who was like 40 years before that, it wasn't really just for the study of ecology. It just happened to have space on the ship for him to come and study stuff if he wanted. So 1905, Theodore Roosevelt set up 70 million hectares, which is like 700 million acres of land in our country, to protect it. Okay, from then, and I'm just gonna hit these. I'm not gonna quiz you on these. In 1962, the first book was published to say like, hey, everybody, we need to be worried about what humans might be doing to the climate and the environment. Like, we need to be more environmentally aware. So 1962 is when that first book was published on that. People obviously worried about it before, but there. 1967 in Rwanda, so we're all getting to Africa, the international community bands together and says, hey, there's a whole lot of stuff here that we need to protect. Let's work on it. There's other pieces in here. I'm not going to go through it all. On page 25, if you would like, you can see it. There's like the historical development and some of the major milestones that have happened. So if we look at it, 1990, the IEN, directed by Tom Goldtooth, formed by indigenous peoples to protect tribal lands. 2004, looks like my writing's really small here. Greenbelt movement in Africa to get people to start planting trees, and people can plant a forest like it's crazy. People can actually do it. A single person can plant a forest if you give them enough time. And then looks like in 2015, the island fox, The island fox found in California went almost extinct, made a comeback. The same thing happened with American bald eagles, just so you know. They were almost extinct at one point. You would never know that living here because they're everywhere. Now, the study of ecology certainly develops with time and with culture as well. I would encourage you to always be mindful of stuff. Don't buy disposable water bottles. Like, we have water fountains everywhere. I'm not going to tell you what to do, obviously. I wish we had recycling here, but where we live makes it harder. So there's 3 words that get used with recycling. The 3 arrows. What's one of them? Recycle is one of them.
reuse.
Reuse? Reduce. Try to reduce your waste, reuse what you can, and recycle what you need to. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of recycling here. Okay, beside that, though, we're going to keep rolling with this. If you are going to study ecology and that's your job, what do you think you might tell people when you meet? Say, hey, my name's RJ. I'm an ecologist. So check it out. Here we go. Ecologist. I suppose we'll define it, although it might be kind of redundant. Do you guys know what redundant means?
No.
Unnecessarily repetitive. So I use that word redundant all the time in math because it's a really, really bad habit of mine to say a straight line. Did anybody notice anything wrong with me saying a straight line? So I did. So like is that a straight line? Yeah, I'll tell you, I used shift to make it so, and that's my shortcut on mine. But check this out. Could I just call it a line?
No.
Yeah.
Can you make a line that's not straight?
No. No.
How?
That's just.
That's a curve.
Yeah, that's a curve.
Straight line is redundant. You can just say the word line and get the exact same idea across. When I say something is redundant in here, it's because if I know what ecology is, what do you think an ecologist's job is going to be? To study the relationship amongst stuff, right? Like, they're just the person. So instead of rewriting that all, if you're cool with it, I just want to say studying ecology, or an ecologist studies ecology, and then we'll add some other stuff to it so we don't have to write the exact same thing. So obviously an ecologist will study ecology. shocker there. But beyond that, what specifies that as just the difference between somebody who studies it and the word itself? Studies ecology. Now, we get to, in our modern science, using tools, models, etc. So we have like pretty fancy equipment to do this stuff. Tools, models, etc. Now, for example, if I'm a big game hunter and I draw a tag for like a moose and I want to get like a big bull moose, I could go out 20 miles into the wilderness, wherever I might get my tag, and then wait there for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks and get up and watch those moose every morning, right? Like, people do that, and it sounds like an awesome, fun trip, or not, depending on if you're into that sort of thing. But does everybody have the time to take 3 weeks off work to go watch the moose every morning and see where they're going and where they've been? No, but how could they watch them without actually being there? Trail cams, right? So like all of a sudden with modern technology, we can make cameras so small that animals don't notice it. A moose wouldn't care about a big camera. But if there's something like a skittish animal that's really scared of stuff, we can make robotic looking animals that look similar, or we can strap a camera to the back of a seal and let it swim around and then collect that data. We can view these things using those tools. Then with all that data, we can start making models to see like, hey, is this really how they're going to act? So with an ecologist in mind, instead of, I'm going to ask a question, and I'm not just looking for the silly answer, which we'll see if we can agree on that. My first thought is, what do they study? Or what might, rather? Okay, there is an answer that I think is natural. If I said, hey, what might an ecologist study? What's the correct answer, but obviously not what I'm looking for? Yeah, so like obviously they're going to study ecology. That's not what I'm after. Let's think about it. I'm going to give you guys like 2 or 3 minutes, maybe not that much, a minute or two, we'll see. I want you guys to see if you can come up with a few things that you think an ecologist might study. Talk it out with one another. If you're an ecologist that's studying the relationships between animals and their environment, what sorts of specific things might you study? Now talk it out. Uh-oh.
It's like how they act in different environment.
So let's...
Like how
how they provide it.
Okay, so I'm going to tell me if this is the same thing. When you say that, I think, how do they survive? Now, if you want to look at a particular animal, we can, and I think there's a lot of interesting things you can get there. But if you're looking at how do animals survive, that's a good idea. Like, I agree. How do they live here in whatever location? What animal do we want to look at? We're just going to use that as an example. What's the weirdest animal you guys can think of? A chameleon's the weirdest thing?
Tasmanian tiger.
A Tasmanian tiger, they may not exist anymore.
Yeah.
Allegedly they're extinct, but there's always legends.
Red baboon.
A red baboon.
What are those like big nose monkeys?
oh those like
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm trying to think of their name. I'm not going to. It'll come to me.
Swastika, the happiest animal.
What?
Swastika. I don't know.
I don't know what that is. I'll have to do some digging, but it's too close to the word swastika for me to comfortably Google it.
What's that?
Weird. All right. I'll tell you, I think the weirdest animal that I've ever heard of is a platypus. They're so strange.
Oh yeah, because
They're
like,
so weird.
not
So I don't care which one we do. Let's stick with, we'll just say baboon. I don't know about a red baboon. Let's just talk about a baboon. You might want to know, how do they survive? What would that entail? Like, if you're wondering, how does it survive? How do you survive? Oh, okay. So when you say how do they survive, you're looking at what do they eat, right? Now, if you're trying to study, like, in detail the life of a baboon in a tribe of baboon, I don't know where the emphasis is supposed to go in that word, so I'm going to just move it around. Baboon. Probably not that one. What do baboons eat?
fruits. Give it the
Fruits. Pretty wild. Baboons will run down and catch birds and eat birds. Like, yeah, when they catch them, because they do. Other random things, baboons, they like fight wars against other tribes of baboons. Like, legitimately charging into battle, they'll run in, they'll steal women and children and take them back to their tribe. It's crazy. Not like Planet of the Apes.
No.
They don't speak English. But if you're looking at the food, I think a reasonable question to beyond that is, man, if a baboon hypothetically eats crane, like a type of bird, do you have to worry about what the crane eats as well if you're going to really study the baboon? Like, you need to know how that food chain exists, right? So as we're looking at that, it might be valid saying, how do they survive? What is the food chain? Not in general, but in that specific location. What does the food chain look like here? So that if we wanted to make sure that this population keeps living, what would we need to make sure we support? Other things. Unfortunately, human beings, or fortunately, depending on how you view it, probably both, do we sometimes destroy natural habitat for ourselves? So in that situation, I think that's something worth studying, especially if you're going to be setting up a big operation. You might care about the health of an ecosystem. So if we're talking about baboons specifically, where in the world do baboons live?
Somewhere like
I think in Africa.
somewhere in Asia.
Asia and Africa?
Yeah.
I don't know enough about baboons to speak confidently, but you sound like you know what you're talking about, so we'll go with that. Okay, so in Africa and Asia, the health of the ecosystem. If you wanted to set up a new coal mine in the middle of a jungle, which people do that, you're probably and hopefully going to have an ecologist go in and study the environmental impact of that project before it gets committed. The Copper River mine in Alaska several years ago, same thing happened. There was a huge campaign across the state by environmentalists to prevent the construction of this dam, which would possibly poison tons of rivers which salmon run in. And believe it or not, people eat salmon, and they were pretty mad about their loss of food. So that makes sense. All that is ecology type of stuff. Other things like here specifically on our island, what sort of things do you think ecologists might look at? We've used the example before. Fish and game dictates something important for us.
The community.
The eggs.
So the eggs, maybe. The amount of fish that we can catch, you have to have an ecologist go in and study to make sure that the population is dense enough to allow that, hey, you can take this many. Okay. Now, within this ecology field, we will dig into this. We have some kits that we're going to use to make some specific biomes, which maybe you don't know what that is yet, but we'll get there because we get to start our discussion about the spheres within our planet. So, right off the bat, when you think of a sphere, you guys know what a sphere is? It's a three-dimensional circle. Okay, a ball, right? Okay, our Earth is not quite a perfect sphere, just so you know. It's called an oblate spheroid. Instead of like a perfect circle, it's kind of stretched out because if you spin something, it pulls itself out. Okay, plus we have mountains, so it's not perfect. Do you know any of the spheres of our planet? Like, have you ever heard the word the geosphere?
Oh yeah, like in the atmosphere.
The atmosphere? Others?
Wait.
Geo is like geology, the planet, the rocks, the structure. The atmosphere is where?
The hemisphere.
It's all this, right? Like, we're in it right now. Check that out. Are there other spheres? It almost feels, again, I think this is the second time we've made an Avatar reference in here, or that was another class. Earth.
Oh yeah.
Air. Cool.
Oh, like the nature. Fire.
You guys ever watch Avatar?
Yeah.
Okay, so fire is not its own, but that's a good thought.
Water.
Water. Or hydro?
Hydro.
The hydrosphere. Okay, now we gotta get away from Avatar. There's one more. Last Airbender is the one I'm referencing. Although they're both kinda. Yeah, so we already hit those. Fire doesn't get its own. That's part of the geosphere because volcanoes and stuff. As we're looking at it, though, there's one more that's not on Avatar. Our discussion, what class are we in? Biology. So we have the geosphere, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the biosphere. Which sounds so hardcore when you say it with the right emphasis. But we're going to define it. The biosphere. Our planet's huge. I think we'd all agree on that. The biosphere must be some section of our planet or a region. I'm going to say portion. And I'm going to let you guys help me figure this out. We're going to say the biosphere is the portion, or the part, if you would rather, of our planet. What's our planet? Indeed it is. The portion of our planet which supports what? Based on the fact that it's biosphere. Good. Life.
Oh.
And I just kept writing. I didn't. I just forgot to pause. The biosphere is the portion of our Earth that supports life. Now, our Earth is huge. Is there life in all of the planet?
No.
No. Where are you going to find life? And that's a really broad question.
Somewhere where there's an ecosystem.
So there has to be an ecosystem, right? Are you going to find life on the ground?
Yeah.
We're on the ground, right? Like even us, I would say that we're on the ground. If you go up a mountain, not here so much, but do some people live in the mountains?
Yes.
But the mountains are still in the ground or on the ground, okay? So as we're thinking about this, it's super cool to see like how big this is. It's a really small part of our planet, but this ranges in a pretty wild way. It ranges from the deepest, where's the like the lowest place on our planet where you might find life?
Ocean.
How deep in the ocean
Um,
will you find life?
Very, very deep.
All the way at the bottom of the deepest places?
Yeah,
oh, wait, but it's still gonna be ground, right? Yeah.
You there so yes, but as we're looking, you're right. So this goes several kilometers deep. Now, when we talk about this, there's two places, and you are absolutely right, Bam Bam. It's going to be ground still because you're under the water, but there's ground down there. However, there's a lot of stuff between where your boat will rest and that bottom. Is there life all the way through there still? Like fish don't all live on the ground of the bottom of the ocean. So there's obviously going to start here and start going several kilometers down. Even in places where we didn't know there was life for a long time, like hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean that spit out water that's like hundreds and hundreds of degrees, there's life there. Life exists down there still. Okay, so you go several kilometers deep, and I'm just going to say this can come in two, for lack of a better word, flavors. Deep in the ocean, for sure. Any other places that are under, like, I would consider deep, but maybe not in the ocean?
Caves.
Caves. Okay, other places where this happens, and glacier or permafrost. You will find life, or at least evidence of life, down deep into glaciers. Okay, so we go several kilometers deep all the way until we get to like here, where we're on the land. Awesome. There's tons of life on our land. Is there life in the air?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What life is in the air? Birds are a good example. So several kilometers deep, but it turns out that our biosphere, also goes several kilometers high. Now, for those, it's easy to get goofed up on this, and maybe, I'm not trying to mislead you, but there is just some weird things. Obviously, birds exist, and birds fly. Some birds spend like 99% of their time in the air, like almost never touch the ground, which is wild to think that. There's also bacteria and things like that that are on the ground. They get swept up and they get caught in air currents way up high, and they just happen to be up there. So birds, bacteria, if we want to call viruses life, which I don't know if we do, I'm going to say birds and bacteria are like the good examples. And obviously everything here on our planet. Everything that we deal with life is part of the biosphere. Every single part of it. Now, worth mentioning, there are some crazy little animals called water bear. They're not bears. They're not really bears. They're tardigrades is what they're called. They're microscopic, and they are wild. They can live in space. If we took tardigrades to space and shot them outside and said, hey, you're in the vacuum of space all of a sudden, they're cool with it. They don't mind. So we'll look at it closer. We will, because they're crazy. Would you like to see a tardigrade really quick?
Yes.
They're weird. Anyway, regardless of which part of the biosphere we're looking at, whether it's the deepest depths or the highest highs or any of the super diverse places on our planet, ranging from deserts to tundra to all those different places that we talked about, it turns out that there's environmental factors that impact how well life exists, right? So here we go. In a little subsection, we're going to say environmental factors. So things that influence our biosphere or our environmental factors. Now, there's two different things that we're going to look at, and they're all environmental factors, and they're things that we would probably have to consider if we're looking at life and how it lives. Environmental factors of life fall into one of two categories? Were you yawning before I made us have the discussion about it, or did it start because I did that?
It started.
My bad. I should not have done that.
And like, I don't know.
Note to self.
Yeah, I tried stopping it multiple times and then.
You're good. Does not offend me. Did you catch it, Freddie? We made eye contact. I just yawned. Did you notice? Did you really? You probably heard me breathe a little heavier. All right. Now, we're going to continue this